Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. Today we are doing a home decor piece using some dollar store items and a napkin. This is all part of the 5 for Fall series where I'm doing 5 mixed media art journaling projects using fall napkins. Today's napkin, I am using this watercolor pumpkin napkin. I love the colors, the teal with the burnt sienna and the yellows. So I will be using Bright Aqua, Liquitex Basics, Burnt Sienna, Artist Loft, use whatever you have that's that color, and Naples Yellow. I've pulled those colors out of the napkin, I've swatched them out to see that they're close enough and I like them. So that's what I'm going to use moving forward. So here is my substrate. These 3 little tins and this tray. This came from Dollarama. I think it was $3 or $4. They had them last year. That's when I bought them. I gave them a good coat of Kills 2 all-purpose primer. I just kind of went through all my tins and I give it that primer. I've also used gesso, but depending on your gesso, that may or may not work as well. I've also painted on just the tin. So I'm taking the napkin and I'm just rough sizing it here. It's going to fit. I'm going to be able to do 2 tins with 1 napkin. So to make it easier to work with, I'm just cutting it in half, getting the proper sizing. It wraps perfectly around. It's like this napkin was made for this little tin. So I'm really happy about that, but I still have some excess there. So I am going to measure. This is about 3.5. So I'm making it a little bit longer because the tin is an odd shape, wider at the top, smaller at the bottom. I am going to cut it a little bit extra because when you wrap it around, sometimes there's, well, let's just say it's better to have excess than too short. So I've marked where the line is and I'm cutting it. Now I've measured it 4 inches. I did go back and I cut a little bit more off, but every little last bit, this bit and the bit that I cut off after, I have saved because it can make borders, it can make decoupage, collage fodder for another project. Before we decoupage the napkin on, I want to paint the inside, and I'm painting the inside first because I don't want to get anything on the napkin, and I tend to be a messy creator. So this is Burnt Sienna and my brand is the Artist Loft, but at different times I've had the Liquitex Basics. That's usually the 2 that I have, colors of paint that I have. Now this covers pretty well. If your paint doesn't cover, let it dry and do several layers to build up to the depth of color that you like. As you can see, I'm using the brush and a makeup sponge to get around that rim. I want to see that little bit of burnt sienna or aqua or yellow around the rim to border the napkin. So I'm just going to speed up the video and I'm going to do the same thing. Now my bright aqua was a little too bright. What's in the napkin is a more muted, so I added a little bit of white gesso. Later on you're going to see what else I do to adjust the color because I wasn't quite happy, but I'm doing the inside and I do let it dry in between. Here I'm doing the trim, and then of course I'm going to do the same thing with the yellow one. Now you could choose whatever napkin you choose, pull those colors out. You could paint the interior the same color, so they all could have been aqua, they all could have been yellow, they all could have been burnt sienna. That's just an individual choice. In fact, you could leave it just plain and don't paint it at all, should you wish that. I just like the color inside. Just adds a little bit more to it. There we have, the 3 are inside and I'm loving how it looks with that. So now when you go to dry these, they are metal, they're tin, they will heat up. So while I'm showing drying here, you have to be very cautious when you dry because it will heat up and you could burn yourself, or the paint may bubble. So I think the preferred way is just to let it dry on its own. And that means we have to be patient, have another project on the go. Now back to the napkin. I've left the plies on while I was cutting and sizing and everything. But now that I'm ready to decoupage, I'm peeling off the excess layers, and that's usually 2. So I'm just going to peel that off on all 3. And since I've got 3 tins, I'm kind of going assembly line. Paint, 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 glue, 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 what have you. Now a word about the primer, whether you use gesso or you get the Kills too, and I'll link that to Amazon if I can find it. You want that to really dry. I usually do that several days ahead and get it. Now here's one where I've decoupaged the napkin on. And I'm going to walk you through this step by step in a way that I think is the easiest way to get it done. Now remember that it's wider at the top, smaller at the bottom, which means you're going to get wrinkles, but that's okay. So I put the napkin like this with the excess in front of me, and I'm going to use my fluid matte medium. Now this is a Liquitex brand, and this is what I use for all my decoupaging. You can use Decoupage, you can use Mod Podge, but I highly recommend that you use liquid, not gel. The gel may be a little bit more abrasive on it and might tear the napkin. Now I flipped the napkin, and I'm going to go 2 to 3 inches at a time, applying the fluid matte medium, and I'm being fairly generous with it. You can see there's lots on my brush, and then I'm pushing that over. Now I'm lining up at the top under the rim. That's what I'm being careful with. And then there are wrinkles, and I'm just patting that down ever so gently with my fingers. When the napkin gets wet, it gets fragile. So I'm just pressing it in, and there are wrinkles. And I just press them down ever so gently. You don't even see them with this all over patterned napkin. So the key here is line it up at the top and then press ever so gently down below, making some creases. And there's some creases there. That's what I'm trying to show you, the wrinkles. It doesn't distract from the napkin or the pattern at all. Just be very gentle. Go 2 to 3 inches. Don't try to do too much. And if you get glue or the matte medium on your fingers, you want to wash that off so you're not sticking and inadvertently ripping that napkin. Line it up. Press it down, making some wrinkles. And then do the next section. And if you go slow like this, and I've kept this more real time, it just takes time. Don't rush the process, you'll regret it. Now this napkin goes perfectly around. There's very little overlap. Now I could have water cut that so there isn't any overlap. And in the past I've been very perfectionistic, I guess. Here I'm just kind of matching it up loosely and gluing it down, and it really doesn't matter. But again, depending on your napkin, depending on the pattern, you may want to adjust. You may want to water cut it. You may want to do things. Like I lucked out here. This fits like almost perfect. So this napkin comes from NINNYSNAPKINS.com. I recently got a shipment of all the new fall ones, and that's why I'm doing the 5 for fall. 5 fun mixed media, art journaling, home decor items using napkins. So if you've got fall napkins or you want to do some fall projects and not sure, this may give you some ideas to use what you have in your stash, or it'll give you time to go to NINNYSNAPKINS.com. There's a link in the description box and a coupon code, and get them in time so you can make your fall projects. So once I've decoupaged it down, I am now going over it with a good coat of fluid matte medium, and I'm being very gentle. I'm keeping lots on the brush so that I don't inadvertently tear the napkin, and I'm just pressing it down and giving it good coverage. This is kind of sealing it, making sure everything's in place, making sure everything's down. And yes, you will see that on the bottom of the tin, there is some overlap. We're going to deal with that later. I'm setting that one to dry. And we're just going to go with the yellow one now. Same thing. Glue it down with the napkin going forward, and then 2 to 3 inches, pressing down, those wrinkles lining up at the top of the tin. Now I've gone to thrift stores and I've found metal buckets of different sizes. Great place to go to get some very inexpensive things. But check out the Dollar Tree, Dollarama. They have lots of different sizes. This trio came from Dollarama, which I know is only in Canada, but it might be in other places. So there are my 3 tins, partially decoupaged, ready to go. Now I'm going to decide what to do with this tray. And, you know, after going back and forth about what color, I decided at this moment I'm going to paint it yellow. Here I'm just seeing what it looks like, and I'm kind of happy with it at this time. And I'm just giving it a coat of acrylic paint. And again, if your paint is a little thinner, a little less opaque, it may take 2 coats or 3 coats. Let it dry in between. Don't try to keep painting over top of it. The paint will tend to get globby or sticky. Now this trio, I could make them as they are and use them in the tray. I could have them sitting outside the tray. I can gift them. We're going in a fall Thanksgiving kind theme with this. I can gift them one to different people, put candies in it, or fall themes, coffee pods, crystal light. Now, I thought that aqua was a little too bright. It didn't quite match, and I noticed in the napkin they had gray with the teal. So I mixed some gray in with my bright aqua. This muted it down. So good trick. Anytime you have a color that you really want, you want it more muted, add a speck of gray and see what can happen. This now is a perfect match to what's in my napkin. And it just made me happier to have it more muted and not as bright. That brightness just seemed a little too stark for me. Did I say I struggle with perfectionism? So here there is some overlap. So I grabbed a sanding block. This I got from the Dollar Tree. You can use an emery board as well. And you're just sanding off this. Now, key, make sure it's completely dry. If it's not completely dry, when you try to sand it, it may rip. So just go little by little, rubbing against the metal and getting it to cut. You can inadvertently, you can also just wrap it around and glue it down, and no one's the wiser. Now you saw me put the rim at the top, the one color. So this tin is burnt sienna, so I'm putting a banner, or I'm painting the rim down below as well. And I'm just using the makeup sponge to apply it. Fall, I think, is one of my favorite seasons. I love the colors, the richness, the warm color zone, which is usually not me, but in the fall, I embrace it all. What's your favorite season? Is it fall? Is it spring? Then I decide I want to do the rim of this in the burnt sienna. I want to bring all those colors into the tray in some way. Now at this point I'm thinking the teal just was too bright, wasn't going to fit on the tray. It would be just a little too wrong. It wouldn't work. But you'll see I changed my mind. Then to introduce that color, all the colors into everything, I decided to splatter. Now splattering, one, introduces the colors to something else. It also will hide any imperfection, any globs of paint. If I chip the paint, if I scratch the paint, that's all going to be kind of pushed back and you're not going to see it. So on the yellow, I do the burnt sienna and the teal. On the teal, the yellow and the burnt sienna. And on the burnt sienna, the teal and the yellow. It's just making it all work together. If you don't like the splattered look, you can omit it. And again, if you don't have this napkin, although it is absolutely gorgeous, using whatever fall napkin you have, pull the colors from it. And they may be very similar or not. So I splattered the side. And that's kind of where it was. And I thought I was done. Nope. I decided that the tray wasn't going to be yellow. And I got out my muted bright aqua that I mixed with gray. And I painted the front of the tray. So now you have the yellow, you've got the burnt sienna and the teal all on the tray. So you make the best choice you can. And then later you might want to change it. Now I wanted to put a sentiment on each of the tins. So this is from my Grateful, Thankful, Blessed sentiment pack. And I cut and paste them and got the right size font. And now I'm putting tissue paper over top, taping it down. And I'm going to feed that through my printer. While I'm waiting, I decide, I want to do some more pattern on the tray. So this stencil is called Knitted Stitching. And I masked off part of it. And I'm going to line it up straight edge against the rim. This is a little bit difficult to do, especially trying to get it on camera. But you'll see what I'm doing. And I'm using the yellow, the Naples yellow, which is one of my favorite colors. It's very opaque, very muted. If you don't have this color, I highly suggest that you get it because I use it lots. But you can also take your yellow and add white to it or white gesso and get that more muted, softer yellow. So I've done that part. I'm going to give it a quick dry, and then I'm going to put the stencil back on, line it up, and keep going around the tray. And having that straight edge at the top really helps line it up perfectly. I picked this knitted stitching stencil because it kind of has the same kind of shapes that the napkin did. So I'm going to give that a dry and go all the way around, but I didn't do a lot of that on camera because it was very difficult to get the right angles. So there we have the tray and that. Now I wanted to put the words on the tins, but when I tried them, because the napkin is very busy, you really didn't see the sentiment. They just got lost. So I went for plan B, and that is I'm going to put the sentiment inside each tin. So here I'm just cutting off a lot of the excess, and I will be decoupaging down the sentiment that is on the tissue. On the inside rim, like you see on some cups that you can buy. Sometimes they put it at the bottom of the cup, sometimes they put it on the rim. And I thought, okay, And I'm going to put all 3 sentiments around the rim. So it's going to say, so very thankful, incredibly grateful, unbelievably blessed on all 3 tins. Now it's really hard for you to see the inside of it because I need a solid surface, but I am simply going to glue this down with my fluid matte medium, and the trick to getting the tissue paper to go very translucent is use a healthy amount of the fluid matte medium or decoupage or Mod Podge. So I'm putting that down and placing the sentiment, and then putting again a generous amount of the fluid matte medium or adhesive on top. Now you could have just put 1 in each. I opted to do 3. I didn't do a great job of lining them up, and I could have, because there's a line there in it. So I could have done a better job of that, and lesson learned. But you could use that bend in the tin to help guide you in gluing them down. But putting it on tissue paper made it possible for me to easily get in there and glue it down. If you are a subscriber to my channel, thank you very much. If you aren't a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. And for all of you, click on the bell and click the option to be notified of upcoming videos. That way you won't miss the rest of the 5 for Fall series or see what I'm up to next. There you go. I love the way this looks. So there are my 3 tins on their tray. I love how it comes together. I can use this together. I can use them apart. If you don't want to splatter with the color, you can splatter with gold on all of them. That would look lovely as well. Now, I could give this a coat of polyacrylic, Minwax polyacrylic. This is satin. That would work fine. If I plan on using it for food, you can use Polyvine Decorator's Varnish. It is food safe, and you can get this at NINNYSNAPKINS.com as well. But it is food safe, so I may do the interior with that varnish and the exterior with the Minwax. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this inspired you. Go get creative.